mentioned before, the drumline here at Jackson State University in its current form was started in 1973. And at that time, the instruments they had were a little bit different. You'll notice throughout some of the older cadences I'm going to introduce to you, we use quints today, obviously, or six-packs, or just tenors, as most people call them. We don't call them that because we have another instrument over here known as the tenor drum. Singular, comes from a tenor drum that used to be mounted on the leg in old drum corps. And someone, I haven't figured out who yet, to credit this to, decided to mount it upright like a small marching bass drum. Now, what you also need to know is the first instruments they had were trio toms. So on the old cadences, when I talk about cadences written by Aaron Thompson or Cecil Cross, they were all done on 3 drums. So any quint players, tenor players out there who go, man, they're not playing all the drums and they really should. Well, it's because those are the older cadences and they try to maintain the history of those cadences' individuality. So at this time we're going to play a cadence from the 70s known as cross confusion. What I want you all to take note of is that the moves are not just theatrical and physical, they're also timekeeping. They're a method for keeping time, and a very easy way to do that. And so pay particular attention to the movement on this particular cadence. This is cross confusion. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, groove. When I first came to Jackson State that I wanted to get my head around was understand about tuning. A lot gets talked about tuning. As drummers, we think about tuning our drum sets to certain pitches, and there's a whole, you can find probably about 30 articles if you go on PAS website and put in drumline tuning, and you'll get all kinds of different philosophies. But more or less, we really try to keep the idea of bass drums as bass drums. That the ensemble is basically a drum set anchored by the bass drums in the back. So we don't want to tune them too high. You tune them too high, you end up having an instrument that is no longer a bass drum. It's somewhat in the more treble range of things. So that's kind of why we hang on to that. With the drum set idea, we move up through the cymbals, which double as all the cymbals for a drum set. Both hi-hats, and in a couple of cases you're going to see some very intricate back and forth hi-hat work. On the tenors, floor tom, but actually one thing that I have come to realize is that in most of the arrangements that we're going to hear when we get into the music scoring part of this is they fill up the role of the conga drums, kind of adding the filler inside the drum set. The quints have a dual role. They both fill in the gaps with just like tom-toms on a drum set, but they also function a lot like tonal bass drums for those of you who come from more of a drum corps background. And so a lot of times you'll hear what they're doing, you may go, again, where are the sweeps and crosses? A lot of that is because those melodic ideas get transferred onto the quints. And they stay pretty much right around the middle C region. Our snares, we try to tune to about a C on the treble clef. Bass is about an F below the bass clef. So we're using the entire range of what's available in terms of tonality. So I just thought I'd give you that little insight into kind of why the drum sounds so different. We don't use Kevlar heads because plastic is a more traditional sound, and that's really what we're going for, is a traditional rudimental snare drum sound. So, all right, the next cadence actually brings us more into the present. This is a cadence that we call defunct. It's also the nickname that the snare lines like to call themselves, and they're going to go ahead and play this. This features the snare line in particular using hybrid rudiments. Hope you'll enjoy that.
1, 2, 3.
They never play a rim shot. You would be amazed at how many fewer drumsticks we go through in a season for that simple fact. The old stick shot comes in very handy for all those kind of needs. And once again, we're going for a drum set sound. Every once in a while, we'll throw that in, especially on that cadence you saw there. Quickly, briefly, about sticks. Tenors are using a small bass drum mallet. Basses are using the largest bass drum mallet we can find. Right now, we're working with Vic Firth to develop some mallets and sticks that will go along with their Groove series that Johnny Lee Lane, the prof, introduced a couple of years ago. And so hopefully we'll have something to show off here in a couple of years, or shorter, if the case might be. The next cadence we're going to play features, again, the quints and snares. This is DAF 1. And there's going to be some backsticking, and I want you to watch how they execute this backsticking and the visuals. Again, we're going for unity, cleanliness. This is one of the things that separates JSU and what we pride ourselves on in our conference, the Southwest Athletic Conference. It's very competitive, and everybody's got their own sort of individuality about their group, but our identity is wrapped up into being together. we're going to play sort of were written in the last like 4 or 5 years, and they feature first cymbals and tenors predominantly. This next one's going to be JDO, and the last one is by far our most technical cadence, and this is called chop, not slop. Okay, so we're going to play those two back to back pretty much, and we hope you'll enjoy this. JDO followed by chop, not slop.
Ready.
Talk briefly about scoring and arranging real quick. Just do a couple of tunes that we play in the band. First of which is a tune called Motown Philly. You might remember it, especially if, like me, you grew up in the 90s. Popular band, actually popular vocal group, sang this song. And what we're going to do at this point is I just want you to pay attention to the way the drum line acts in a hocket, much like that's a term that gets thrown out, but really easy to think about when you look back to what we did this morning. Brazilian music. The sum is greater than each of the parts, and that's something that we think a lot about when we're arranging tunes, that all the parts fit together and that we fit into a groove, that it's not just snare drums playing a really cool lick, or Quint's getting to throw down a whole lot of notes, sweeps, crosses, tenor's just getting to blast. There's got to be some balance there, and so that each piece has its place in the music. So again, kind of challenge you to think with the idea that not locking in on one part, but listen to how the melodies jump out in each of the instruments. And so at this point, we're going to go ahead and play Motown Philly. And what I also want you to listen to is how we're used to hearing tonal bass drums are the only ones in the drum line who have to work on timing, right? Okay? They get really good at that. You get two drummers, bass drummers that have been playing together for eons, and the two of them think like one person. Guy with the right hand, guy with the left hand, put them together, one brain. Okay? This whole drum line has to do that, and that's one of the concepts that's most important for us, is to make sure that we can all think and catch the syncopations and timing together. All right? So that's not just a bass drum's responsibility, but that becomes the whole line's responsibility. So in this example, we're going to be doing a fill towards the beginning of this, where you basically hear this melody chasing itself around the entire battery, much like you'd hear in split parts running down the bass line, except we're going to do that with the whole drum line. This is Motown Philly.
1, 2, 3, play.
this time we're going to combine a little bit of the old and new styles. We're going to do a cadence called Cross Tight. And again, this was written by Mr. Cecil Cross, one of the founders of the drumline. And it's going to move on into a couple other cadences and end up with one of our section leaders, a guy named Maurice Gibson, who was here a few years back, and he wrote the last cadence on this, which is known as E9. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for you. Once again, it's been a pleasure to play for you today, and a pleasure to have you all here at Jackson State University, not just this year, but for the past 6 years. We're really enjoying being able to host this for you and enjoying listening to you all come and bring your amazing music and showing all the hard work that you bring to us. So at this time, this will be the last cadence that we play. This is our medley of cadences, and they might play a little something afterwards while you're on your way out if you want to stick around. But thank you again.